This is Musical Talk.
Musical Talk.
The UK's independent musical theatre podcast.
Musical Talk, the UK independent musical theatre podcast.
Hello, Thos.
Hello, me. Hello, you as well.
Do you
Hello,
have
Nick.
the Easter eggs factor?
I see what you've done there. No, chocolate is okay, but I must be the one human on the face of the planet who doesn't absolutely go a bundle on chocolate.
I don't like Easter egg chocolate. It's too cheap. Moving on.
Well, I think that's an insight into your life, if I may say.
There was a pun in there. Thos and I are going to talk about the X Factor musical, I Can't Sing.
Those two different statements there,
yes.
Nick.
Well, one is true and one is also musical. I've seen the show at the London Palladium with a book by Harry Hill and music and lyrics by Steve Brown of Spend, Spend, Spend fame, which is coming back, by the way, which our friend Lottie Wakeham is directing.
Well, can I ask a couple of questions before we start?
Yes.
What was your expectation of the musical before you saw it? And because basically in this country, Harry Hill is famous as being a good surrealist comic who has got
surrealist comic.
Well, yeah, but has got himself household name by doing primetime ITV television programs on a Saturday night, which is, full on. That's when you get your highest viewing. And indeed, it's due to Harry Hill that I've watched ITV in the last few years. About a year ago, 2 years ago, it was suggested almost in jest in the newspapers that Harry Hill was going to be producing a musical based on the television programme.
Writing.
Sorry, I do apologise.
Yeah.
Producing as in creating,
Yeah.
that sense, I do agree. Yes. Based on the television programme, The X Factor, which is one of the myriad of Simon Cowell variety programmes also on ITV, but a huge, huge popular ratings winner. Now, I must say, I was torn in two directions. Because I really like Harry Hill. I find Harry Hill very funny, and I've liked him for many years before he even when he was on BBC Radio 4 in the good old days doing Harry Hill's Fruit Corners. So
when he was a chemist, you were a fan of him.
Yes. Well, those of us who have no hair and big collars, it has been observed. What's the point of that? So I like Harry Hill and his material. I do not
Around his shirt.
Yes, but I do not like The X Factor. In fact, I can go so far as to say I have never yet sat through an entire episode of any of those reality television programmes.
But it shows the power of those shows that you know the format without having actually watched any of it.
Well, it's an old format. I mean, 30, 40 years ago, it was called Opportunity Knocks. It's just got, essentially, it's just got a bigger
set.
Yeah. It's an old tradition, but yes, it's currently living, and we've had, even in this country, we've had Pop Idol, I think, and various.
Well, our own Mike Dixon was the original MD of Pop Idol.
Oh, what's he now?
Years and years ago.
Well, he's gone on to great things.
I know, you were
He already started doing great things, I think. But when it came to The X Factor, it's not a programme. When I heard about this musical, I thought, ooh, now this is going to be odd. And I genuinely thought to myself, I I like Harry Hill, but this is the kind of thing that tabloids would make up. So it may never happen. And then I thought to myself, it's an interesting idea, but it feels like a one-joke idea. Oh, that's a popular thing, let's make fun of it. Because he used to make quite a lot of fun of it on his main ITV programme, which was called Harry Hill's TV Burp, which I'm sure we'll mention again. So as a result of that, therefore, I was not expecting it ever to happen, and if it did happen, I expect it to be an appalling flop, and then and I did not expect it to be any good. I will tell you in a minute what I think. But that was my sort of views coming up to it. What about you? You've seen The X Factor in your time?
I've switched off The X Factor,
Yeah, right.
I think, but that involves seeing it in the first place, so I kind of know what to expect. What really clinched it for me was, and I said this before on the podcast, was they weren't lazy. They got real music,
right.
Steve Brown in to do it.
Yeah. So this is when you started thinking this could be something, when you heard that actually they are spending the money and they are getting the people.
Because all they could have done was just put a load of pop songs in it.
Oh yeah.
And they didn't. And
it could have been a jukebox.
Yeah, or jokebox.
Hey, I think I'll.
And that made me very happy that it wasn't. Not that I've got anything against jukebox musicals. It's just good that they got Steve Brown. And then I saw the Harry Hill movie, which had songs by Steve Brown in it. And I started...
It's a film musical.
Yes. Interesting, with a talking hamster commenting on the actions. That's obviously a thing that he likes
that's a very
to do.
Harry Hill thing, isn't it? Yes, quite.
So I like the fact that, they got a real composer in. It had a good director who'd done one of the funniest plays I'd ever seen, which was the play What I Wrote, and also The Lady Killers, and that. So it's got and stage entertainment behind it, which is they have Jan Joop van der Ende, or whatever his name is, who owns Endemol,
Yes.
has 1.16 quadrillion pounds. It's a big show, and it is a big show.
Well, they put it in the Palladium, haven't
Yes.
they? Which is, when I heard it was going to the Palladium, I thought to myself, this is either going to be a rip-roaring success or one of those glorious twang-like failures. Because if it hadn't worked, then, forgive me, the Palladium is a big building to fill.
I forgive
and,
you, Thos.
Yes, thank you. And it's also
It's
a
your
big
fault.
It's also a big building to fill for more than one night. If
Yes.
you're having a run. If it had not worked, I think there would have been an awful lot of egg, a sufficient omelette on people's
Yes,
faces.
the X Factor.
Hey,
There-
it's back to where we started. Well, goodbye, Nick.
There lies the problem with the show. I think it is struggling to find an audience, as would any show
Oh.
in that.
Do you think
theatre.
so?
A lot of it's papered.
I don't know what that means.
Free. They'll say, to every cast member, if you've got friends that want to come in, let them come and
Right.
support the show, give word of mouth and that kind of stuff. I don't know if the Upper Circle has been open at all during the course of the run. So it's struggling on that. But once people are in the theatre, they are loving this show.
Well, let's make an observation. You've already said you enjoyed it. Let me tell you, I also enjoyed it. So this will be a positive review.
Good night.
You mentioned the audience. I tell you what I noticed about the audience. Now, it may be, I can tell you immediately, whatever the reason they're there, it is not a typical Theatre London audience. Because demographically, it was everybody. I was genuinely surprised. It's been the most cross-representative audience I've ever seen in a London theatre. Because
Panto audience, would you say?
to a degree, I suppose. I mean, there were children as well. I mean, people were bringing children.
Shouldn't be.
Well, there are one or two jokes which are a little bit perhaps above people's heads at that age, but there were certainly children in the audience. There were plenty of couples. There were white people, black people, and Asian people. Essentially, the London demographic was fully represented there. I mean, this is a dreadful thing, and this is an indictment on the way theatre unfortunately operates, particularly in London, commercial theatre. But you do not see many black people in the audience, and in this there were, and that was. And what I got was, funnily enough, I got a much fuller ITV audience in a London theatre than I've ever seen before. Now, that sounds snotty, and I don't mean it to sound snotty, but I'm trying to say that ITV is a populist network. It and BBC One always fight head-to-head for the big audiences, and sometimes fight each other for the dumbing down audience as well. They lower their expectations in order to grab more people, sometimes, not always.
Well, the X Factor, the I Can't Sing even makes mention of that. That
Well, yes.
you'll miss such great shows as celebrities dunking in chocolate and whatever it is that they talk.
As Charlie Brooker has observed, there comes a point when you make things up about television and then 10 years later they're made. So yes, they will occur. That chocolate dunking one is almost definitely an Easter special, I think, in 5 years' time on ITV2. The point here, I think, is that the audience was genuinely cross-representative of a current London demographic, and I was delighted by that. And of course there were the usual number of gay men in the audience. You could see the usual theatre-going crowd was there, along with a whole bunch of people who weren't normally the theatre-going crowd, and that was really pleasing to me. And to get someone into the Palladium, that's a pretty impressive feat, I think, because one of the problems is an awful lot of people live in their home counties and can't be bothered to come into the centre of town to go to theatre. Why would you? I can understand that. So people were bothering. And it looked, I couldn't see the upper levels, but certainly in the stalls it was sold out, or full at least. So that was very pleasing. I do hope it goes on to have great success. And I believe, in fact, I think you've tweeted in the last week that there's some talk about it going to Broadway, of all things, although...
Well, speaking of your tabloid...
Conversations, yes.
Conversations, that was a story, but who knows?
Right, okay.
They might just be trying to drum up business for the show.
It would have to be substantially rewritten, because I tell you, because we should start talking...
entirely rewritten.
Well, yeah, I was going to say what we need to discuss then is that...
flopped in America.
But they have an American equivalent, don't they?
They have American Idol.
Yeah, but there's nothing... I mean, how shall I put this? The concept of the reality TV talent show is sufficiently strong in both countries for it. You just rename it appropriately. You don't have to do a great deal more. But it's very,
did you notice
very
that the X
British.
Factor actually removed itself from the branding of the show? It's no longer the X Factor musical at all.
Is it not?
It's just I Can't Sing.
Oh, really?
They changed the marketing thinking that it was putting people off a bit, so it's now just I Can't Sing.
I didn't spot that. It's interesting that it's putting people off. That's very curious, because that's probably the element of it that put me off. Well, let's talk about the show. At least now, I should say a couple of. I'm going to try and avoid spoilers here, but obviously, as we're talking about a fresh show, a lot of people won't have seen it yet. So just be careful that we might say some things. So the show is remarkably consistently funny all the way through. I suppose a short review for me would be that what it doesn't have is a great intellectual basis. It's not trying to make a point. It's not
makes an anti-point, doesn't it?
Well, let's talk in a minute about the points it does make, but it's not really, it hasn't got a big message. It hasn't really got a big moral. It is not like a Sondheim piece in the sense it's not got a big substance, a big matter it wants to chew over and present you with shades of grey and all this kind of stuff.
50 of them.
Or more. But what it is, and what it sets out to be, and therefore what it succeeds in, I think, in spades, is it sets out to be a comedy. And it sets out to be a musical comedy. As a musical comedy, I think it is excellent. I laughed from the beginning to the end, more than I expected. I found the music entirely palatable, very entertaining. Some of the songs were excellent, and songs I would actually... excellent, if you like, or ex-factulent, as opposed to be ex-flatulent, which would be less good. They were, some of them were excellent, to the point where I am on the verge of actually buying the soundtrack album to hear them again.
Or the Carter Recording, as we say.
We do say
if
that,
they
yes.
release one.
I thought some of the songs were already out.
There are some songs online.
Yes. I hadn't realised that it hadn't actually been released yet. I'm so sorry. I naturally assumed that it was all available.
I think the songs are very good. I think some of the lyrics fall flat.
Well, I went to see From Here to Eternity by Tim Rice, and even the best can occasionally get a little less sophisticated than they've often been.
The music is brilliant. What I didn't, and what my companion pointed out to me as well, was that the songs don't move the plot forward. They stop the plot. They say the point they're going to make, a very funny point, and then it carries on.
It's a 20s musical in that sense.
That's a musical comedy trope, isn't it?
Absolutely. As I say, I mean, Gershwin was doing that. And in a way, that's fine. Not everything has to be a Sondheim. In fact, if everything was Sondheim, we wouldn't want Sondheim. I love Sondheim, but I don't want everything to feel like Sondheim. And this is the absolute epitome of the other end of the scale.
I really quite enjoy it.
I couldn't possibly speak for my friend Stephen. But seriously, there's a range of musical theatre, and we have to, people often ask this rather tired question, what is musical theatre going to be like in 10 years' time? And the answer is exactly like it is now. There's going to be a huge range from silly musical comedy at one end to, as you say, throat-cutting, wrist-slitting misery done intelligently whilst shredding the human soul at the other. All musically. And that's good, and that's bad, and that's what it is. There's no point in arguing. And in the middle, we have jukebox musicals. But this is, as you say, they didn't go for a jukebox. They wrote a specific score. The score is effective. It does what it's supposed to do. It's jolly, and it's varied. And once again, I don't want to keep going on about this, but when I saw From Here to Eternity, one of the problems was, the songs felt like they were in a range. And it was quite a narrow range. This, all songs are in a range because if they've got one composer, you've got the natural range of that composer. But every song did something different.
You're not going to get an Eminem parody in From Here to Eternity, though.
I might have livened it up rather, but no, that's true. Let's talk about some of the songs, because the role of these songs is for the staging as well. There's a lovely song where the Subo character, or the way I interpreted it, she's a shop assistant who's got big dreams, and she's a slightly larger lady,
and big everything else to match.
Well, she was dressed the day I saw her. We first see her really, I think.
See her X Factor.
You're making your own rude jokes now, but we see her in a supermarket, a sort of generic supermarket where she's.
Tesda.
Yes.
It's brilliant in itself.
It is.
Fans of British supermarkets.
Fans of British supermarkets. Is there a big podcast market for that?
Sure. Well, Tesco and Asda together.
Yeah, clearly. But what it was a disco supermarket, because and
best kind of supermarket.
Yes, it's all sequins and gold. I don't know what you call it, costumes and things like that. But there's this lovely sequence where she and several other of the shop cashiers are walking on the conveyor belts that you get at the checkouts. And now I'm told that someone else has done this before. It may be a borrowed concept. Maybe a borrowed concept. But
Jerry Mitchell did it in Kinky Boots.
That was, I think, what somebody else...
But it was actually done in a music video long before that, but that was on things you find in gymnasiums, the Travelator...
the walking... Yes. Yeah.
So I don't know who copied it from whom.
Well, it makes no difference. It worked really well here, and it was beautifully done, and that's a great disco number as well. Glitter balls and all this, and shiny curtains, and that worked brilliantly. There were plenty of...
She's only making 1 point, isn't she?
Oh, yeah.
Big girls have more fun, effectively.
Yeah, it's all right. If you'd have asked me what the message was, I'd give you no idea at all. What I know was I enjoyed it for 4 minutes. I just leant back, enjoyed the spectacle.
Fall to England.
But I enjoyed the spectacle. I enjoyed the song for what it was worth. I enjoyed the performances. I enjoyed the fact it was a lovely big disco pastiche right in the heart of Act 1. And that was all I really wanted from it, to be honest. By that stage, I realised that it wasn't going to be food for thought. So,
the supermarket.
Yeah, but once I'd had that idea, once I'd realised that what I was getting was perfectly entertaining in its own right, I allowed it to happen. The other song I really want to pick up, by the way, is the 11th hour number almost, which is what our hero, the male hero in this, when he shrugs off all the trappings of show business and does what he always wanted to do in the first place, and plays essentially a little kind of... it's a lovely little intimate number played to a ukulele. Or
played on a ukulele.
Yes,
he's singing to the girl.
Yes, absolutely. But you get the idea. And if you're looking for flavours of pastiche, I suppose to show that's going to remind you of his once, currently playing in London as well. But it's not. But I don't think it was representing a pastiche. I think what it's arguing is that everything we've seen so far has been big and bold and overblown, and the X Factor really encourages that. It wants you to be even more overblown than you've historically been, and all he wants to do is sing songs. And he sings this lovely song which he's ostensibly written, and it's small and it's intimate, and it's actually, I think, the most of all the songs in the score, and it's not really an emotional score, this is the one that is attempting to move you. Now, it doesn't move me because I'm made of stone, but it was the song that I enjoyed the most, funnily enough, just because it was just a lovely little number.
And that's the point it's trying to prove,
yeah,
I think.
It is. Oh, yeah.
I mean, there's so many different kinds of music in this show. The title song, which is brilliant, which has one of my favourite lyrics in the whole show, which is I always thought quavers were a cheese-based snack, is, to me...
Because that would have to work you'd have to translate that in two different ways in America, because I assume they don't have the crisp-style snack quavers, and also I believe they don't use the word quaver for...
notes or something.
Yes.
Which is, to me, a parody of Harry Nilsson's Without You. If you listen to the chorus, it sounds quite similar. We have the Eminem parody, which I want to ask you about later, and we have a kind of Cilla Black, Dusty Springfield song, which Geordie sings in Act 2, which is Love Yourself or Be Good to Yourself or something like that. We have to talk about Simon Cowell's musical material as well, because he has a song called Fabulous.
Yeah, well, this is the figurative Simon Cowell, played perfectly, by the way, by
Nigel Hartman.
Yeah, I've some of these speech marks impressions, or the characters who are purporting to be representatives of real life, either absolutely or almost. So Dermot O'Leary's character has the rather splendid name of Liam O'Deary. But the actor playing him has just got all Dermot O'Leary's splendid mannerisms.
So much so that the audience fall about laughing.
There's utter recognition from the first moment. And bear in mind that I don't watch the X Factor, but I have seen Dermot O'Leary in various bits and pieces.
And he has a lovely song about hugging.
He does, yeah. Well, that's the point. Almost everyone's given a song. So it's a lovely ensemble piece, although, at heart, I suppose if you're forced, there's a story about a girl who can sing.
Say what the story is.
Well, we could try it, but there is a girl who wants to succeed and be on the... she actually wants to study UFOlogy at university, but she can also sing, so she almost falls into this by accident, and she meets a young man who's rather good as a handyman. He can do it. Well, he's up to a point, he's good at electrics and plumbing and bits and pieces, but he really wants to sing. And they meet in... they live. The nearest equivalent is trailer trash, I suppose. They live in a caravan under a motorway bridge, the girl does. Yes. Anyway, they meet in those circumstances, and then they meet again at the auditions for the X Factor.
And the funny thing is, where they live, they never heard of ITV because her father's iron lung had one plug socket.
That's right. They can't pick up the independent channels on their television, which is bliss as far as I'm concerned. That's a core story, and then of course they're both accepted into through the auditions into the show, which, as you know, is a knockout talent contest, for want of a better word. No, well, no, right, but it's knockout, which means different characters disappear all the way through, including there's a lovely Jedward spoof called Altar Boys. I found them particularly amusing because I find Jedward infinitely fascinating anyway, in a kind of experimental kind of way, for vivisection, you understand. But
you wouldn't get through to the brain with their hair.
Well, there's an awful lot of lacquer in their breathing, I should think. But in their case, it was beautifully observed by the two actors playing the Altar Boys, these Irish or cod Irish performers, because they dress the same and they've got all the Jedward mannerisms, even down to the fact that when they're doing synchronised dancing, one of them gets it a little bit wrong.
Okay.
Every now and then, one's doing it quite well and the other one isn't quite doing it as well, and he knows he's not doing it quite as well, and he's looking at the other one for sort of support and doesn't get it. So there was lots of lovely little face stuff going on there, which I really enjoyed.
They have a wonderful song called When You Wish It Happens, which I'll just leave that title to you, and it does all go wrong, and it is very funny. And I think that's another great joke.
Well, it also reminded me of their several appearances in the Eurovision Song Contest. I mean, bless them. I assume they know what they're doing, but they always come across as though they don't, and it's lovely. I find Jedward actually do give a certain amount of entertainment, not in any level of professionalism. There is something I find very appealing about them as a performance, and it's almost, this nation, Britain rather than Ireland. Well, Ireland's obviously taken to their heart because they use them for Eurovision as well, but Britain has taken them to their heart and at the same time knows they are appalling. And so to see that on stage and then just perfectly reflected and refracted ever so slightly to make it a heightened version, if that's possible to believe, really worked well.
There's a musical called Altar Boys.
Yeah, somebody else pointed that out to me as well. Jedward is a very particular construct in terms of two names together. You could laboriously try and find two more names or reverse it, so you were Ed John or something like that. But that doesn't work. I mean, you have to come up with something. But what sounds Irish? But forgive me, if they're clearly twins. It's got to sound a bit Irishy. And you think Catholic Church choir boys, there's your connection. So,
speaking of, I want to talk about the character that got the most scorn when I was reading kind of the public reviews on various websites and stuff, is the character of Freddie Modo, or whatever it is, the hunchback with a backstory to end all backstories.
Yeah, well, a proper literal backstory. People didn't like that character.
No, they said he should be cut immediately.
Really?
Yes.
But he's the point. I mean,
he's
also barely in it.
art.
I mean, he's got about 5 minutes in Act 1 and he's got 5 minutes in Act 2. And his is the actual... Although there's a Subo-like character, Subo being Susan Boyle, by the way.
Britain's Got Talent.
Which I can't tell the difference, but it's
one has Ant and Dec, one doesn't.
But they're all talent shows,
yeah,
knockout talent shows, yeah. Susan Boyle is famous in Britain for being a woman who you wouldn't first look at, dreadful though we are, we do make crass judgments based on first impressions and how people look. And then she turned out to have the voice of an angel, and of course the nation took her to her heart and she won the competition. Hooray. And that's the
character. She's now the biggest selling female artist of all time.
Is she?
She is.
Oh, jolly good for her. I don't own any of her material, but she's famous enough for me to have heard her without watching these programmes, although, as I say, I thought they were all one programme, but there we go. And so the shop assistant lady is the Subo character, but more extremely, the hunchback is the Subo character. At least the journey is, because he is so ugly he doesn't even get into the auditions. They take one look at him and say, go away. And then he disappears until the very end, where he comes out as the a way of I don't want to ruin it, but he's there at the end.
It's a bit like the Phantom of the Opera.
Yeah, and he can sing beautifully. And you can guess where this goes. That's not, I don't think I'm desperately ruining the surprise when you can work out what his arc would be. Let's talk about something I'm not going to give the punchline to, but there's this is a sidestep. One beautiful little joke. There's a trio who are in the auditions queue who are called Soul Stars. There's a lovely moment.
And it's written on their shirts.
It is. It's written on their T-shirts. And I'm not going to ruin the punchline, but there comes a moment where they present the chap who's running the audition arrangements with the funniest line I have heard in theatre for years. And I laughed so loudly and so long in the theatre that people started looking at me. And
even the cast. Shut up, we're trying to perform, darling.
Darling. And I find when I think of it, because it comes to me at rare moments, I'd just be sitting on the train or lying in bed, and suddenly the joke on the punchline will come back to me and I start laughing. Well, I'm not going to say it. No, I'm not going to say it on the.
Well, you can tell.
Right, cut this out. Yeah. All right. I wouldn't want to ruin that joke for people.
There's some very, very funny bit. What did you think of the talking dog character, which is Harry Hill's voice, done by the wonderful Simon Lipkin? We can't degrade his performance at all.
Sorry, it was done by Harry Hill's voice.
No, well, by that I mean it's like Harry Hill.
Oh, he's commenting.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's an editorial. The dog's conceit is he's run, as you say, by Simon Lipkin, and he comments on what he's saying. He ostensibly belongs to the woman the heroine.
Shanice.
Yeah. He speaks, but no one can hear him. When he speaks, they think he's barking. in every possible sense. The point is that allows him then to comment on what's going on, and it's actually a gift to a writer because first of all, it allows you to have a narrator in a play, which these days is considered very clumsy.
It allows you to update the script constantly.
Yeah, it also, forgive me, it also allows you sarcasm without destroying the character plays. Because if you had a sarky character who was one of the central characters, you wouldn't feel very much for them. But if you have a sarky puppet dog on the side, just cracking jokes or doing stupid things, but mostly commenting on what people are doing and saying, "Oh no, bloody stupid," which is essentially the role, then that will become very tiresome. But the gimmick gives it enough distance to make every joke work without it damaging the dynamics of the story, I think. What about you?
I think some of his jokes are brilliant. There's one about Warhorse, which always goes down very well. Some fall flat as a pancake.
Yes, that's true. I think that's true. But then again, there's no shortage of jokes in it. So this is one of those shows that can afford to have a few jokes that land badly, because they might work another night and another joke might fail. You're right. There were a few jokes that simply didn't work on the night I was there, and yet I've come away with the view that it was laugh from beginning to end, and I did laugh.
Now, I saw the very first preview of this show.
The press did something rather naughty. The Independent, unfortunately, the paper I read and enjoy, went to the first technical previews rather than the press preview, and rather rudely gave it a thumbs down well before the normal press night, which is that is not normally done.
No.
And unfortunately, and I think you said this best on Twitter actually, shame on the Independent. Now, as I say, I'm an independent reader, so I am unfortunately,
we're an independent podcast.
I'm saddened by that, because it set the tone for what then happened over the next few weeks. But if you were there, tell us about it from your vantage point, because you've seen it in preview and in proper run.
Yes.
Yeah.
Our good friend David Herzog works at the theatre, so I thought I'd go and support him. And
hello, friends.
Yeah. Hello, musical talkers. One of our presenters, Jen Green, was the assistant orchestrator on this show, so I went to see it with her to spur her along and stuff. So it was a nice kind of family kind of
friends and family,
a friendly evening to support this new musical at the London Palladium, which is a rare thing.
It is.
It happened with Sister Act, and I went to the first preview of that and stuff. So
this is a British musical,
is.
even rarer yet.
I know, a very British musical. So David said the interval might be a bit long.
Because it's a very technical show.
It's an extremely technically demanding show, especially Act 2, which is... I want your opinion on this. I think Act 2 is a completely different style to Act 1 as regards...
It's a different story.
Yeah.
I mean, right, very briefly, and this won't ruin it, Act 1 is about how do you get into the X Factor, and Act 2 is the X Factor.
Yeah, it's like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory.
Yes, it is. That's a very good parallel, actually, yes.
The interval was 52 minutes long, which I quite enjoyed, but if I was on my own, I would have got very annoyed with my own company.
I wonder how the bar did.
Well, they were giving away free drinks.
Oh, were they? Oh, right, okay. Because that is a long interview, even for a technical...
Interval. The producer character, the executive producer, changed completely. He had this recurring joke which no one laughed, so they cut that and things. And the Tesla sequence, the disco song that you liked so much, was completely different in the first preview. No glitter curtains.
What's the point then?
Exactly. So that they glammed it up a bit.
Can I ask, I've been told that and I'm not going to ruin the ending, but there's a Phantom of the Opera style prop moment.
Yes.
Was that there? Because I was told... Oh, right, I was told it wasn't. That's interesting.
Was.
Oh, right.
What isn't there now, but was there when I saw the first preview, was the rule book. Now, the rule book, when you saw it, was a little tiny notebook that came out of his pocket. This was a huge set piece that came down and was literally a 15-foot wide book that was opened.
Projection or prop?
No, it was a real prop.
It was a proper
piece.
prop, was it? All right.
A proper prop.
A big book.
And that's what this show is funny for. It has these enormous set pieces that do one thing and then disappear for the funerals parlour set.
Yes.
The mouth... The digger machine, I mean, that's how much money...
It's also same with the costumes and the performances, isn't it? Because there's a Valkyrie moment. I think Act 2 opens with essentially a Wagnerian chorus of Valkyries.
Here come the judges, look, here they come.
But, out come the...
Testament to the score that I can hum that, by the way.
Well, you've seen it a couple of times, but yes, you're right. It's also quite a jolly number because it's a good way of starting Act 2. But, on come all these sizable women wearing armour and spears.
And the hero has a suit specifically made for him, for his bow. But it is a double-edged sword.
Oh, yes, you're right, he does. Yeah.
It is a double-edged sword for this show. The running costs
are enormous.
Must be enormous. It's not selling out, and you can't expect it to sell out 2,600 seats 8 times a week.
But I will say this again later, but I think it's a good show. I think people
it's a wonderful
should
show.
go and see it.
It's just getting people in there in the first place, which is proving the tricky thing.
Once the word of mouth gets going.
But I think there are a couple of ways the show can and might possibly be saved. Simon Cowell is one of the producers of this show.
Yeah.
Britain's Got Talent is just returning to our screens, so I wouldn't be surprised if he was clever, and he is clever.
He'll cross-fertilise.
I wouldn't be surprised if we saw the wonderful impersonation of Louis Walsh that we
Yes.
get in this musical, the actor playing or appearing on the show, or we get Shanice going on and singing this. I wouldn't be surprised if the two worlds started to blend.
Oh, of course. Very
And
sensible.
by that, you can stunt cast this show till the end of days. If
Gosh,
you were
what a clever... Yes, you're right.
if you were to put Susan Boyle in playing the character of Mary or whatever her name is, and possibly not Jedward playing the altar boys, because you have to be amazing dancers to do that part.
Well,
But
one of them does.
But you can, but you can kind of cross these two worlds.
Yeah.
And if Harry Hill is like Ben Elton as regards We Will Rock You and going in once a month and updating the script, it will be continuously up to date.
Sorry, I didn't know that. We Will Rock You is updated.
Yes.
But it's set in the future.
Exactly, so you can make references. You haven't seen We Will
No,
Rock
no,
You.
sorry.
So that's how I think the show could possibly be kept running, and it'll tour beyond, forever and stuff.
Have to go, only the bigger venues, though, just for the technical. I mean,
Yeah.
it'll go to the Mayflower in Southampton, but it might not make it into one or two of the small,
the big Edinburgh one. What's
yeah.
it? The Playhouse in Edinburgh?
Whatever it is. But it won't do the Tramshed, Carl Shorten or whatever, Yeah, I mean, it's such a shame to say that, this show needs saving, and it only needs saving economically, because there is nothing wrong with the show. The show itself is an excellent show, so much so that I would be delighted to go and see it again, and I have been speaking of it positively to my friends and family.
And I think that's how it will play out. And apparently it's working. Baz Baminboy in the Daily Mail has said that the marketing efforts do seem to be working, which is great.
Yeah, it deserves to survive. I would be very upset if it didn't last a year at least, whether it goes on longer than that.
David Herzog has told us that the box office has said to him that it will last at least a year.
Oh, good.
Which is good for that theatre, because it's a huge theatre, and it's not exactly in the world's most, it's not in theatre land.
No, it's not. It's at Oxford Circus, the middle of Oxford Street and Regent Street. I mean, it's a lovely, as we know, we've discussed it. It's a brilliant venue. It's absolutely steeped in history, but it is pardon my language, is a bugger to fill.
What I will say about this show, and I know it's a nerdy thing to say, but it's the best sound design I've ever heard.
Oh, I agree with that. Yeah.
In any, and David said it in the rap number. If you're standing on the upper circle, the floor is moving.
Oh, is it?
It is because they do a technique called click track for that song, which means they're playing along to essentially a pre-recorded thing to give it a bigger sound. But the whole orchestra is also playing along, so it's a double. If you would have 16 instruments, it would then be 32 instruments in the case of it, and it is a big sound.
Yeah, it is. We've discussed this before on Musical Talk, but I'm always amazed that one of the pioneers in the early days of click tracking, or at least backing recordings in order to enhance the sound, is the Black and White Minstrel Show from the early 60s. Amazing.
Yes.
The Black and White Minstrel Show was running at the Victoria Palace in 1961-62, and that's when they were doing it. So we're talking
vinyl,
but we are talking 50 years ago.
Yeah.
No, it was early tape, but it reel to reel, I imagine. But as 50 years, that's a practice that's been going. It's also been refined massively, but that's not to say the actors aren't singing. Let's just talk about the two central characters for a bit. Funnily enough, I'm not going to say she's weak. I think it's the way it's written. But the heroine, if you like, is, I think, the least well-drawn of the characters. That's partly because some of the characters are grotesques. And once you've drawn a grotesque, you don't have any more to do than just make it laugh. Make people laugh at you. Then you've got the plumber hero, if you like, who's got a bigger journey in a way, because actually he's fighting against something. He's got something he wants, and he knows how to get it, or he thought he did, but the method he's chosen to getting it, which is getting on the X Factor, doesn't allow him to do so. The actor who sort of plays the hero, whose name is Alan Morrissey, and the character is called Max. He's the sort of the plumber character.
Apparently, all these characters are based on real contestants.
Oh, are they?
Because apparently there was a woman who worked in a supermarket who then
went on to great things.
It's not so much as Susan Boyle, but it is based on a real backstory.
One of the contestants.
Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. Well, I don't know. I mean, I've never watched the programme, so I don't know who these characters are based on. But the Max character, it does a very good line in Vulnerable Men. You are. I think that you're expected to feel more for him than you are for the female
course.
character. And it's actually more his journey than hers.
He has the nice song that we talked about.
Yes, he does. He also has the revelation about what's worthwhile and what isn't. And of course, forgive me, they're a couple, is boy meets girl, boy loses girl, boy wins girl back again kind of thing. So we're not looking at anything sophisticated there. But he was very appealing. I thought he carried that character very well. And if there's a heart to the piece, it's in his character, I think. He's also, I must say this physically, he's got very beautiful eyes. He's got the best eyes in London at the moment, I would say. I'm not expecting you to comment on this. But one thing I will ask you to comment on, because I think before we were recording, or certainly on another occasion, you went to see the preview, and another scene that's changed a lot is there's a scene where he is seduced by the...
Oh, yes, by Geordie.
Geordie. She's such a wonderfully performed character. We might have
to explain that joke for everyone, I think.
But she's one of the judges, and she's been required to seduce him. So she lures him into her dressing room shower to fix the shower, and then the door closes.
Yes, and we had a kind of Rocky Horror Show tribute with some fun projections going on in
the preview.
Yes,
yeah, and they're quite saucy projections.
Yes,
they, which...
we had kind of shower nozzles going in specific places and stuff like that, and quite sensibly they kind of toned it down a lot.
Yeah. Because when I went, almost none of that was there. Basically, the door closes, you hear a few sound effects, and then the door opens again, and it's all innocent. But, if those of a more filthy mind have been led to believe that naughties are happening... Oh, and you do get to see the fella's chest if you're interested.
But not the ladies.
That probably would be a step too far, I think. But that's another change. So there has been a bit of sort of toning down and toning up, because, as you say, some of the stuff's a bit strong for kiddies, but... that no longer is, or at least it's on the edge rather than having passed it.
I have to say that the number I didn't respond to was the kind of the big Broadway number
with the stairs. And
with the stairs and the stamen and all that kind of stuff. I just didn't. You're the expert in that era.
Oh well, no, I agree with you. It looked right, it felt right. It just didn't work at where it is in the... it felt like it was the one step that was one step too far, almost. Someone had said, we need a Jerry Herman-style Busby Berkeley kind of event. We got one. It possibly outstays its welcome, might be the problem with it, actually, because it's a good showpiece for Simon, and indeed, to a lesser degree, other characters. But actually, Simon is fairly established by then.
Yes.
We've got... the Simon character as portrayed in this piece...
without giving too much away.
...is not a character of great depth. We are shown his range fairly early on, and his interests, and that remains the case all the way through until a lovely ending at the end, which we won't reveal. So there's no need for him to be enhanced by a big look at me number.
And he has two of them, doesn't he?
Yeah, maybe that's the problem. Maybe there's too many of them.
And also the beginning, I think, is too Simon heavy. It's a good song, if that's not entertainment,
Oh, the very opening number. Yeah.
I just wish it
was... Boy,
was...
Simon.
I wish it were more about the characters that we're going to meet during the course of the evening, as opposed to just Simon, because it's very Simon heavy, this show, as well.
Well, you say that. Act 1 isn't.
No.
I'm not sure I agree with you on that one, partly because the Simon we get at the beginning is the last taste of Simon until the X Factor Act 2, when we get, as you say, solid Simon. This is turning into a very unusual conversation. So I'm not sure I agree with you. I agree it feels like a prologue, however. It does feel like it feels like a setup scene. If it were a film, it would happen before the opening credits, but of course it can't do that. It's a musical. Or it can do that, but it would be unusual. So I do know what you mean. It doesn't phase immediately. It doesn't perfectly fit with the rest of Act 1. But I think it's needed. And I quite like it.
I do have to give special credit to the wonderful Peter Dixon, who is the voiceover man of the show.
He's very good, yes, absolutely. And he does it, it's to perfection.
Yeah. But overall, it's a very, very, very good show.
I don't think that... Actually, I wouldn't say there's a duff performance in it.
No. It's playing at the London Palladium. Do go and see it if you're a fan of quirky British musical comedy, because that's...
Yeah. If you want to laugh...
Yes.
And you want a musical that's going to make you laugh, then you will not do better than seeing I Can't Sing. It's the funniest thing in London at the moment, I think. And the score is perfectly delightful, perfectly palatable.
And if you don't want any of that, go and see Once.
I couldn't possibly comment. Thank you, Nick.
You're welcome. That was Thos Ribbits and me, Nick Hudson, discussing I Can't Sing, which is now playing at the world-famous London Palladium. For more information about the musical, simply visit ican'tsingthemusical.com. musicaltalk.com, and you'll find all the information you need there. Thank you very much for listening to this week's episode of Musical Talk. There will be no episode next week because I will be travelling, but that's why we put, you know, a sort of good amount of content out this week for you to enjoy. But Thos and I will be with you soon. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter at twitter.com/musicaltalk, or like us on Facebook at facebook.com/musicaltalk. Have a lovely week. Bye-bye.
Love is strong, even death cannot kill it. And I'll rise out of this, should God will it. I've got something to bring. I can sing, I can sing, I can sing.
This episode of Musical Talk is copyright 2014, apart from the songs where the copyright persists with the original creators.